ever since Kamala was selected, not elected, selected, to run for president for the Democratic Party, we've been asking you, what does she stand for? What are her policies? What is she looking to do for the country? And of course, she had her rally today in Vegas. She talked about absolutely nothing. She didn't talk about policy. But then out of a clear blue sky, she came up with this, I don't know, spur of the moment thought. Maybe she heard it someplace. I'm not quite sure. But she told the Vegas crowd that she wants to erase taxes on tips. And I thought that's a little weird because I thought Trump said that a couple of months ago. In fact, Trump did say it. In fact, Kamala doesn't have an original policy or thought for herself. She actually has to steal his future policies.
Because when I get to office, we are going to not charge taxes on tips, people making tips.
Eliminate taxes on tips for service and hospitality workers.
Wow, that's actually a crazy thing to see coming from a presidential candidate, to straight up rip off a policy from your competitor like it was nothing, as if it was yours. And of course, you guys know that Donald Trump wasn't going to take this line down. He went on Truth Social immediately to blast Harris for passing off his idea as her own. In his post, he says Kamala Harris, whose honeymoon period is ending and is starting to get hammered in the polls, just copied my no taxes on tips policy. Now, the difference is she won't do it. She just wants it for political purposes. This was a Trump idea. She has no ideas. She can only steal from me. And it makes sense, right? We haven't actually seen Harris's policy platform. She hasn't even done a hard-nosed interview with any news outlets since being handpicked by the Democratic Party. But we do have footage from a Trump rally where he shows the agenda of the vice president.
So don't take my word for it. Listen, Kamala Harris's agenda straight from her own mouth. Would anybody like to see her? Let's do it for a couple of seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I am radical. We need to get radical about what we are doing and take it seriously. As President of the United States, I am prepared to get rid of the filibuster to pass a Green New Deal. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. We have to have a buyback program, and I support a mandatory buyback program.
I believe it will totally eliminate private insurance.
Let's eliminate all of that.
But would you support changing the dietary guidelines?
Yes.
The food pyramid. What would people
Yes. Yes.
to reduce red meat specifically?
Yes, I would.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants.
Where do you stand on defund the police?
This whole movement is about rightly saying we need to take a look at these budgets.
Harris asserted that ICE is perceived as the modern-day Ku Klux Klan.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
I see no.
Are you aware that there's a perception?
That puts ICE in the same category as the KKK. Is that what you're asking me? I see no parallel.
I'm not finished.
I see none.
And yeah, I am radical. We need to get radical about what we are doing.
Now you gotta think, is this why she's hesitant to talk to the media? Is this why she's focused on copying policies from Trump rather than talking about her own? Because this is some damning evidence here. And it shows just how far left Kamala Harris is compared to the President Joe Biden. And then of course there's the discussion about crowd size. How Harris is pulling in all these people to come to her rallies. And sure, she seems to be getting a good number of people seated for her talks, but there's a lot of controversy happening there right now. Two theories are coming out. One is that her campaign is using AI to fill out the crowd as if the place is filled. And the other is that the rallies are actually filled, but that people are only there for the free concert.
Kamala must have a lot of support. I mean, look at all of these people who showed up at her airplane either on the tarmac, in some sort of a terminal or a hangar. The only problem is it doesn't look like this image is real. I don't know if it's the Harris campaign that's making this picture or just some random person, but when you look at it, and I mean look at it closely, there's certain tells. AI never gets hands right. What the heck is this clubbing thing right here? Why do none of the phone screens make any sense? I mean, this one looks cut in half, but none of them are showing the same thing. They're all in the same place, they're all pointed in the same direction, yet they all look completely different. I don't know what the heck is going on in the background here. Here's another clubfoot hand. It's super bright on this phone, but almost nighttime on this one. Maybe that's why AI says that there is a 92% chance that this is an artificial image.
Hey guys, this is Savannah reporting to you from inside of Kamala Harris's rally, which just wrapped up. Now you guys saw all of the footage, and there was actually a lot of energy for her in the building. Almost every single seat was filled, not every single one. But many people are questioning, well, were they here to see Kamala, or were they here because Quavo, Meg Thee Stallion were here, and it was essentially a giant concert? And I'm gonna be honest, guys, people started leaving about 15 minutes after she started speaking, which was kind of notable to me because, you know, this is her first presidential rally in Georgia, and so I thought people would have wanted to listen to her. And then also, she really only spoke for about 30 minutes, I would say, so it was a very, very short speech, but people couldn't make it through it. I kept seeing streams of people continuously leave, and I was like, well, you know, maybe it's the one-off person. But then I started seeing people leave from every single level, and I was like, okay, I mean, maybe there is a little bit of truth to people having come here to see the performances. I don't know how many were here just for Kamala.
So, which is it? While the truth about her rallies and the crowds are still up in the air, Donald Trump's campaign touts that the people there show up for Donald Trump, which is a big deal because you're supposed to influence voters to like who they're voting for. And here's where things become very tricky for Vice President Harris. She's not putting forth any policies of her own that's bringing in new support. That's because she's been by President Joe Biden's side for the last 4 years. She's inheriting Biden's policies. And this is why mainstream media continues to defend Harris and speak on her behalf. They keep praising her and saying that she's the woman to defeat Trump.
But take us inside the numbers. Who is Harris appealing to that Joe Biden was not when we had these numbers?
Yeah, so, okay. Is it that Harris is getting Republican voters? No, it's not that she's getting Donald Trump voters from 2020. What is she doing? Number one, she's coalescing the Democratic base. So look, in Biden this spring, he was getting only 90% of the voters who voted for him back in 2020. Look at it now. What do we see? We see Kamala Harris is getting 93% of those voters. So we see that momentum. The other thing that we see is those untraditional voters. Those voters, there's all this talk that Donald Trump was going to get these voters off the sidelines and get them to vote for him who didn't vote in 2020. Back in the spring, look at that. Joe Biden was only getting 28% of the 2020 non-voters. Look at where Kamala Harris is now. She's getting 43% of those voters, a 15-point jump. So Kamala Harris is doing two things here. Number one, she's getting more of those untraditional voters. And number two, she's coalescing that Democratic base.
While on the other hand, Trump is slowly but surely gaining more and more support because of the policies that he will be putting into place once elected. Now, that's the big difference here. Trump isn't backed by all these mainstream media news outlets, yet he's bringing in crowds of thousands upon thousands of voters. So what do you guys make of the distinction between these two? Now, speaking of which, J.D. Vance and Tim Walz are being compared when it comes to how they both served our country in the military. Tim Walz, though, he's getting a lot of flack, a lot of criticism from former members of the National Guard, which say that he deserted his colleagues when war came on knocking on his door. I did a previous video where I talked a lot about this, guys. You gotta check it out. It could literally change the trajectory of the vice presidency of our country. Anyway, before I go, thanks so much for hitting the like button. Thank you for subscribing to the channel and sharing this video. I'll see you on the next one.